When Rush announced their reunion tour, every famous drummer in rock music knew what was at stake. Some of them made calls, some sent messages, some pushed openly, through their people, for a shot at the most coveted drum seat in the genre. Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson were not interested. Not because those drummers weren't talented, some of the greatest players alive wanted that job. They weren't interested because of a strategic insight so simple and so correct that it seems obvious in retrospect, and yet almost nobody predicted it. Bring in a famous rock drummer and you invite a comparison that can never be won. Bring in someone from completely outside that world, and you change the conversation entirely. Peart is not simply regarded as a great drummer. He is regarded by a significant portion of the drumming world as the greatest rock drummer who ever lived. His technique, his musicality, his approach to the instrument as a compositional tool, his unentaming world, these things are not just admired, they are studied, transcribed, analyzed, debated in detail by people who have spent decades with his recordings. That level of reverence creates a specific problem for anyone who succeeds him. If you bring in a drummer from a prominent rock band, someone with their own legacy, their own fans, their own established reputation, for medius, you create an immediate battlefield. Every fill is measured, every choice is compared. The internet, which Geddy Lee described in an interview with the Brazilian television show Fantástico as prone to hostile debate, becomes a war zone of competing opinions about who is better, who is more faithful, who is worthy. It is, as Lee put it, too easy to make comments. And no drummer, not even the greatest living rock drummer, can win a comparison to Peart in the court of Rush fan opinion. Because the comparison is not really about drumming, it is about grief, about the irreplaceability of someone who is gone. Geddy and Alex understood that, and they chose the only path that sidesteps it entirely. The decision was not made casually or by default. Many high-profile drummers were actively pushing for the role. The vacancy, if you could call it that, was known. The interest was real and significant. Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson made a conscious, deliberate choice to look somewhere else entirely. Not at the rock world, not at the prog world, not at the community of players who had grown up with Rush as a direct influence and whose playing bore the marks of that influence. They looked for someone whose story was different, whose background was different, whose frame of reference for the music came from a place that was adjacent but not identical. Someone who would bring fresh technical intuition, a unique story, a context that invited curiosity rather than comparison. The non-competitive route, as Lee described it, choosing a musician whose background meant that the conversation would be about what she brings rather than how she measures up to someone she is not trying to be. That is a sophisticated piece of decision-making. It is also, in retrospect, clearly correct. The path to Annika Nilles did not run through management meetings or industry showcases or open auditions. It ran through John McIntosh, Geddy Lee's bass technician, known as Scully, who had worked directly with Nilles when she toured with Jeff Beck in 2022. Scully had seen her play, he had worked alongside her, he knew, from the inside of that touring environment, what kind of musician and what kind of person she was. His recommendation carried the weight of direct experience, not a video, not a reputation, personal knowledge. Geddy and Alex took the recommendation seriously enough to arrange private jam sessions in Toronto rather than staging any kind of formal open audition process. They wanted to find out whether the chemistry was natural, not whether someone could perform well in a high-pressure audition scenario. What happened in those sessions, of the 4 days of uncertainty, the fifth day that clicked, we covered in a previous video in this series. But the starting point was a crew recommendation, a bass tech who knew what he was seeing when he watched Annika Nilles play, and two musicians experienced enough to trust that kind of intelligence over the noise of high-profile lobbying. In an interview with Rick Beato, one of the most respected voices in music education and commentary, Geddy Lee praised Annika Nilles in a way that went beyond technical description. He said it takes tremendous courage to accept this gig, not tremendous skill, tremendous courage. That framing matters, because Lee is acknowledging something that the drumming world already knew, that sitting behind that kit means accepting a level of public scrutiny that most musicians will never face. Rush fans are protective of Peart's legacy in ways that are passionate, knowledgeable, and sometimes unforgiving. Nilles said yes anyway. She took the gig knowing that some people, Lee has acknowledged this directly, will never forgive Rush for going on with someone else. That for a portion of the fan base no one will ever be acceptable in that seat. That the criticism will come regardless of how well she plays. She said yes. And she showed up to 4 days of uncertainty and a fifth day that changed everything, and an opening night in Los Angeles, and a growing tour that has now expanded to 23 North American dates. Geddy Lee called that guts. He is right. There is one more dimension of the strategy that deserves to be stated clearly. by choosing a drummer from outside the rock lineage, someone whose primary background is jazz fusion, who is not positioned as a rock legend or a prog icon. Geddy and Alex preserved something specific about Neil Peart's place in the music. They did not create a competition. If Mike Portnoy had taken that seat, the conversation would inevitably have become, in some corners, about how Portnoy compares to Peart. Who is better? Who is more technically accomplished? Who is the greater musician? That conversation serves no one. It diminishes Peart. It is unfair to Portnoy, and it turns the reunion tour into a verdict on something that should not be up for debate. With Niels, that conversation cannot happen in the same way. She is not trying to be Neil Peart. She is not from his world in the direct sense. She is honoring his music while being fully herself. Neil Peart's status remains untouched, unreachable, incomparable, because no comparison was ever invited. Here is what Geddy Lee's comment, "Some people will never forgive us for going on with someone else," actually reveals. He knows, he has always known, that bringing Rush back, in any form, with any drummer, would not be universally accepted. For some fans, the only authentic version of Rush died with Neil Peart, and nothing Geddy and Alex do will change that. No drummer will be right. No tour will feel legitimate. They made the decision to go anyway, not to dishonor that grief, but because they have music left to play, because the songs exist, because there are people who want to hear them in a room, live, one more time, and they made that decision as thoughtfully as they could, protecting Neil's legacy by refusing to set up a comparison, protecting Anika by giving her the full weight of their public support, protecting the music by finding someone who loves it the same way they love it. Some people will never forgive them, and Geddy Lee, clearly, has made his peace with that. The conventional wisdom in the music industry, when a legendary band loses an irreplaceable member, is to find the most credible possible replacement, the biggest name available, the most prestigious hire. Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson looked at that conventional wisdom and went in the opposite direction. They found someone from a different world entirely, someone recommended by a crew member who had actually worked with her, someone with the technical brilliance to honor the catalog and the jazz fusion background to bring something new to it. Someone with the guts to say yes to the hardest job in rock music. And the result? Opening night in Los Angeles, a smile behind the kit, Mike Portnoy crying at his screen, 23 dates and counting, suggests that the unconventional wisdom was correct. Neil Peart cannot be replaced. Anika Nilis was never trying to replace him, she was trying to honor him, in her own way, with her own voice, on her own terms. And Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson decided that Resing 72 and Alive, decided that was exactly right. Let me know what you think.